We are more than happy to get aided by the AI. We are quite reluctant to remove all of our control. So my point is that I think while technology might enable complete autonomy to some of those AI systems in medical sciences, in science in general, in law and in accounting.
Yeah.
All of these professions are going to change dramatically for sure. However, I do argue that it's going to be a short trip to get us to a significant aided decision making and aided activity. And it's going to be far harder than we expect to get us to full autonomy of the machine.
Hey there, this is Yael from the World Intelligence Podcast. Welcome back. Today we have a special guest, Zohar Bronfman, co-founder and CEO of Pecan AI, with a double PhD computational neuroscience and philosophy. Bronfman is also a recognized top AI leader and last but not least, a Forbes contributor. So today we delve deeper into crucial considerations of ethical, social and moral, but also digital, and share insights on navigating the ethical complexities of AI in the age of data-driven innovation. Hi, Zohar.
Hi, Yael.
How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
So I'm super happy to have you today. We're going to cover a lot of aspects of AI, including data science, businesses, business impacts, and so on. But first, please share a bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
With pleasure. So my name is Zohar. I'm based out of Tel Aviv. I've been CEO and co-founder of Pecan AI for the last 7 years. Prior to Pecan, my background is mostly academic. I did a PhD in computational neuroscience, studying how the brain works and how various machine learning and AI models can emulate brain processes. And then in parallel, I did a PhD in philosophy, where we investigated concepts of the mind. So like different angles, all of which are aiming at better understanding artificial intelligence, hopefully.
Wow. How does it help you on a day-to-day? I'm curious.
I would say the computational neuroscience background is probably the technical aspects of what we are doing today here at Pecan. So it gave me a lot of the methodology and a lot of the knowledge that obviously is required for doing what we do. I'll speak more about what Pecan does in a moment. The AI philosophical aspect, I think, is more related to looking at the bigger picture, trying to ask myself not only what is required today in our marketplace and in decision makers' thinking, but also what is going to be the future of all of it, right? Because as startups, we are not only trying to solve something in the immediate here and now, we are also trying to identify future trends and basically lure at the corner with our technology and capture a moment where our technology solves something that some people didn't even realize is a problem historically.
Right. I saw one of your posts, I think it was yesterday or today earlier, about the changes happening with AI, and more particularly automation and creativity. What was it about? Please share.
I think you might be referring to a post I wrote about the fact that counterintuitively, creativity, real creativity, is going to be even more challenging now with AI.
Exactly.
Because everyone are leveraging the generative AI tools, and much of the technical aspects of historical creativity is now solved. It puts us as creators, it puts us in a place where ideas really need to shine. You really need to differentiate yourself. You really need to surface above the noise, the status quo. The machines are amazing in, call it, reproducing or producing variants of existing ideas, but they need us, at least in the meantime, they need us to provide them with a creative guidance. And that aspect of human machine interaction, where we are basically guiding the algorithms in what exactly they need to produce, is extremely interesting, and definitely is going to put pressure on us as creators to readapt, learn, and leverage those tools in meaningful ways. More broadly, if I can just add one more point to this.
Yeah, sure.
More broadly, I would say, I think now it becomes like a truism that
Agree.
everything we know about work, about production, productivity, it is going to change dramatically. You know, if internet had an effect on work through the accessibility of knowledge and through the ability to contribute remotely, these were profound effects. They took a lot of time, a couple of decades, but they changed how we work. One example is that it became far more popular to change a workplace every few years, because there's so much information and you can become skillful in so many things. So I would argue that thanks to the internet, people became more flexible in what they can do, and then they moved from different places more frequently. I think the effect generative AI and AI in general is going to have on the workforce is going to be far more dramatic than the effect internet had. Because I think that it affects us in so many different directions that it's going to be almost unrecognizable in 5 or 10 years from now. Even, you know, the type of talent, human talent, that as companies and as societies we are going to appreciate economically is going to change.
Right.
So I would even expect dramatic changes in salary tables. So all of that is going to happen. It's starting, I think, but it's going to be far more aggressive as we progress.
I'm super curious, and thank you for pointing out those aspects, because, you know, I'm working right now on several case studies, and through the work we do about AI safety, we work also uncovering ethical aspects, and we see the surge of AI agents everywhere. And I often get asked about how far and how deep the impact of AI can have on businesses in terms of financials, in terms of marketing, in terms of decision making processes. And automation is accelerating everything. And I feel that we are about to lose control in a way that it's not going to be proper and clean, but much more aggressive than we think. And when you say 5 to 10 years, I rather go on the 3 to 5 years, because I see it. I see it with the banks we work with. I see with organizations that we are partners with. And what's what's your vision about that, about the impact and the ethical aspects? And what do we need to do as humans? What's your take on it?
I think the impact is going to be wider than we even expect. So, there are things people are already talking about, like, for example, a low-level or junior entry point into the organization, and the fact that you might need far less junior people because the machine will be able to reproduce much of what they're doing in their day-to-day. We've seen some analysis of other professions that the AI is able to emulate quite well at the moment. For example, Google just released a couple of days ago a fascinating research on their medical AI that is overachieving on the average physician's ability to create both a meaningful diagnosis and prognosis, and also recommend treatment and generate empathy. So the AI was actually better than humans in generating empathy with the patients. So, you don't need to be like a super science fiction fan to see where that's going. Much of what we are doing today is going to be aided to a big degree by AI. I'm using the word aided because I think for us as humans, both at the societal level and also at the personal level, there's a huge psychological difference between being 95% aided to being 100% autonomous. And you can see it with autonomous driving. So it's a fact that autonomous cars today would drive better than the average driver.
Of course.
But it's very hard for us to let an autonomous driver take full control over our car. We are more than happy to get aided by the AI. We are quite reluctant to remove all of our control. So my point is that I think while technology might enable complete autonomy to some of those AI systems in medical sciences, in science in general, in law, and in accounting.
Yeah.
All of these professions are going to change dramatically for sure. However, I do argue that it's going to be a short trip to get us to a significant aided decision-making and aided activity. And it's going to be far harder than we expect to get us to full autonomy of the machine. I'm not sure it's a bad thing, by the way. I would rather keep some degree of control for several reasons in the hands of human beings.
It's interesting because I started talking last week about fractional roles, like fractional CMO, fractional CFO, fractional CEO. But the fraction of it, of them, is agent. A series of agents, and you mentioned Google earlier, sharing about the new analytics they do on proteins or medical aspects. But I also saw their paper about agent to agent, and the protocol is accelerating literally everything that we do. So when we come back to the notion of aid for humans in a way that it's a collaborative intelligence, I mean, I just look at the other side, the traditional jobs like plumbers and all these people, working with their hands. And I see them smiling because robots are still very far from us, from doing the job of a plumber. You need, maybe several robots. And that refers to several points, the ethical and social and moral aspects. And from a data science point of view, I think we don't have enough data, or at least quality, to aggregate and to cover what we think about control and power and balance. Because it's easy to have the digital aspects of a CMO. It's easy to have everything that is like has been done, with Excels for a CFO in terms of mathematical aspects and calculating, but it's not that easy to replace a human at the level of changing or doing handy jobs. And at this point, I just look at how far are we from having, these fractional roles for everyone in terms of musics. You mentioned creativity earlier, in terms of philosophy also, about writing pieces. How can we imagine or just have a perimeter of imagination, not dystopia, but much more about, imagining how can we thrive, until we get fully roboted?
I think I would say it's probably, I have more of a continuum point of view rather than a binary kind of dichotomy.
Dichotomy. Yeah.
So I would say, when you think of the professions that generative AI will be replacing as we go, or aiding aggressively, there are two factors that you have to take into consideration in my mind. One is how structured that specific job is, how structured it is in its day-to-day operations. And the second aspect is how much data there is available at the public level, so that the foundational models can access to actually emulate all of that part. So let's take a couple of examples. One of the most structured roles is an accountant, a CPA. They have very strict rules and very strict standards in how they review or overview each and every account or a customer, how they audit.
Yeah.
And the data is relatively available out there because many public companies are required to share much of their data. So I would make the forecast that it would be relatively straightforward to provide CPAs with a very, very rich assistance through generative AI. So if I come back to your fractional question, it's very easy to me to imagine a world where accountants are being aided or semi-replaced by an accounting agent. Maybe lawyers are a bit more difficult, but still I would say legal counsels, especially in specific areas, are relatively structured and there is a lot of data out there. It could be quite easy to create some agents. However, when I turn into the area of executives in startups or in enterprises or anything in between, I would say it's probably going to take a while before a machine would be able to replace someone in that role. The reason being, A, the structure is very obscure. I'm not sure how much structure there is. And B, obviously the data as a result is not available. And even if it was available, it's not clear what data you would even consider. So building an agent that is a CMO or building an agent that is, head of product, I think is going to be a bit tougher, because these roles, as I mentioned, are less structured, less documented, and also, by definition, they require a degree of creativity that machines lack at the moment. So this is going to be a little bit of a bigger challenge. Then the last point about this before I turn into the plumber example you gave is that one crucial aspect of an executive is being able to take decisions and take those decisions based on either explicit or implicit predictions. So what an executive would usually do, they would consume information from different sources. It could be a couple of their employees, it could be some customers, a couple of reports they read online. Eventually, they take all of that information in and they produce, in many cases, intuitively, even subconsciously to some degree, some kind of a prediction about a certain future they envision. There's going to be less buying power out there. There's going to be more demand for something, and so on and so forth, and obviously far more complex cases. Very interestingly, the generative models are unequipped at this point in time to make predictions about the future. They can maybe summarize a report some analyst wrote about the future, but they are unable to envision different scenarios and assign likelihood to all of these scenarios so that they can make an informed guess about the future. That lacuna, that gap in their ability to make a prediction about the future is actually what executives and more senior people in organizations do all the time.
All the time.
So I would say this is still a very big technological scientific gap. Then going to your plumber example, I would say the technology is out there, meaning, coming back to Google, who are by far the best when it comes to AI and robotics research, in my opinion. They have also just very recently released an example of a robotic arm equipped with AI that plays ping pong almost at champion level.
Yeah.
It's an extremely complex robotic mission. The degrees of freedom, the velocity, the ambiguity, the integration between vision and the appropriation of the body, all of that makes it a super challenging task. It is very impressive they were able to pull it off. And from that perspective, it's going to be very easy to create a robot who's a plumber. I would only argue that at this point in time, it just doesn't make sense economically to replace plumbers because the robot will cost far more than the relatively cheap labor we have today for plumbers. So there's an interesting case where you might see more pressure on replacing more expensive roles, even though technology enables you to replace different roles as well. So eventually, if you want to ask ourselves, where is the technology going to evolve and what is going to be the dynamics from the economic point of view of replacing roles or changing the workforce infrastructure, I'd say it goes far beyond only technological and scientific questions. There are, as you mentioned, economical questions and, very importantly, ethical questions. So you need to take all of that and you need to add to all of that complexity, which we are already in a place where we don't really know how to address it, add to all of that the fact that we as a society, and it doesn't matter if you think about it at the individual, company, country, state,
nations,
law,
and
we don't have the entities, we don't have the structures, the social structures to deal with these questions. Who makes the decision? Who decides where you draw the line? Who decides what's ethical and what's not ethical? People speak about those gaps for quite some time. I don't think I heard one reasonable regulatory approach from a structural point of view. We need to think about AI almost like we think about a nuclear weapon. Not because the AI is going to take over the world and kill everyone, just because nuclear technology had a profound effect on individuals. Same goes for AI. Clearly, there's going to be a profound effect on individuals across the globe. Who's going to run the show of deciding what's good and what's bad? So that is my biggest concern. My biggest concern is that there are so many different directions you can take. There's so many different technologies you can enhance or you can freeze, depending on the societal decisions, that the fact that we don't have any structure in place is far worse than having a structure that doesn't do things perfectly.
It's super interesting and profound, and thank you for sharing. Back to the robots. I was a year and a half ago, I was in Japan. And Japan is one of the leading countries developing robots, particularly in terms of precision. And as they're organized and configure those arms you spoke about, it's a matter of research, analytics, and exploitation, but also ethical aspects. And when you think about that more profoundly, seeing dogs from one corner of the earth having operation surgeons doing operation on the other side, I'm just thinking about what is there left for us, one, to think about, and two, to plan for. Because when you speak about decision making processes changing, or thinking about what do we have to do, or to decide where we want the technology to go, I think we're losing a bit of a control. And what's taking over right now is much more about thinking how can we push further optimization. Even more, if we speak about monetization, we all know that costs are going to be reduced dramatically once we use and once we have mass adoption, particularly because if we see the growing development in terms of CPUs and GPUs, it's going to be far more developed within the next couple of years, honestly. And what I see right now is maybe new jobs, new functionalities needed, new operations over technology, and case studies, the uses, what do we do, what's next step, what are the next steps for us humans?
Yeah.
In a more fully philosophical way.
Yeah. So I would start by saying that I think this is obviously a very big question, and it has to be addressed on several different levels. So one level, which is maybe the easiest one, is the individual personal level. So we can ask, Yael, what do you need to do? Zohar, what do you need to do? And everyone else, each and every one, what do you need to do? Here, I think the answer is a bit more straightforward. I would say, submerge yourself into this technology and make yourself a very good friend of AI. Know what it knows, know what it doesn't know, learn about its limitations, learn about its biases, in most professions, there are ways of leveraging AI to become better. Even the plumber, even the lawyer, even the taxi driver, they can all use AI one way or another. And I would say this is the time to become an adopter. I wouldn't even say early adopter because it's not early anymore, but definitely don't be a laggard. Don't be someone who's afraid of AI and doesn't get acquainted with it. Even if you're afraid of AI, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Even if you're afraid of AI, understand exactly what is it that you're afraid of. The interface today allows every person to really understand the dynamics of these systems. And as they constantly change and evolve, that is just becoming a necessary capability. For those of us that haven't done so yet, think of AI like a smartphone. If you won't know how to use a smartphone, very soon, everyone around you are going to consume information through the smartphone, play societal roles through the smartphone, and you will be left out. You'll be basically left out. So that's my individual recommendation. Just get yourself as acquainted as possible with all of these technologies in areas where are relevant for you. Going very up, so if one layer is the individual layer, maybe the opposite one is the national level. And here I would say, I think it's the case already. I'm not obviously a politician of any kind, but I think it's the case that most countries already understood that AI is basically the new nuclear weapon, and it's a core element to their national strategy and safety. So I would say nations, countries have to invest a lot of resources, and we know many countries are very slow and also very short-term minded and are thinking about the here and now and maybe about the next elections. But a country, a nation that is not going to invest a lot, not only in the short term, but also in the midterm and potentially in the long term, is going to be jeopardized. I really think it's going to be jeopardized by countries that will adopt AI more aggressively. It's not going to move as slow as the internet. It's going to move far faster. It's already moving far faster.
It's interesting because you're spot on about the fast attitude of specific countries, really aggressive into AI, while others are shaping regulations.
Yeah.
How do you feel that at your level?
I'll tell you. I think, for example, let's take the US, let's take China, and let's take EU, Europe. So maybe now it's starting to change, but Europe took a very, very conservative approach. And for good reasons, theoretically, one can definitely make the claim that you want to be conservative and cautious. But it's impossible to be conservative and cautious when your peers, other countries of equal weight, are taking a very aggressive and cautious approach, like China or the US. So I think everyone have to align. There are no good international set of balances that can kind of lower the speed. I don't see any scenario where countries are going to take their leg from the gas pedal. It's, again, if we want to look for the analogy, the nuclear technology is very similar, I guess. No one is going to say, hey, I'm not going to develop additional and more advanced AI because I'm responsible at the international level. It's just, unfortunately, not how we think. But I will say that if there was an ability to create some form of an international United Nations type of an agreement. Again, drawing on what unfortunately was very painful during the nuclear arms race, but eventually countries came to the conclusion that if they will not put themselves in some form of checks and balances, it might end up very poorly. Again, I'm only saying the one thing that has changed conceptually is the speed by which things evolve and our inability to predict them. So this is a long way of saying probably at the individual person and the individual country and anything in between, you have to be very capitalistic and try to optimize on as much adoption and as much improvement as you can. But at the international global level, I think there has to be some form of these are the playground rules. No one can break the rules. We all agree these are the rules. Maybe I'm naive. No, not maybe. I'm certainly naive. But I think it's the only way for us to feel comfortable with the arms race that is going on as we speak.
I struggle about the fact, and thank you for mentioning that. I struggle about the fact that between those developing technology, the new technologies, and those doing the regulations, it's going to be really difficult to align them, if only they wanted to. And, I try to articulate that on a daily basis, saying you're not going to see, decision leaders doing the proper decisions unless they have the right choices. And the right choices are in the hands of those developing, the new solutions and the new creative path. So human beings, can evolve in some sort of. And I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how you say we try to put some sort of circularity and having those bounds to see how we use technology for the good purpose of humanity.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I think that we saw many waves in terms of development of AI. The last question about AGI, what's your take on it?
My take on AGI, on artificial general intelligence, is that we are very far from it at the moment. I think what we are seeing is great narrow AI, models that are able to solve some mathematical problems, models that are able to reproduce images, models that are able to recommend a certain trajectory of a missile. All of those models are doing an amazing work. I haven't had any evidence to date. Obviously, it's a personal opinion. I haven't seen any evidence to date of artificial general intelligence, which, just to explain our listeners, what it means is that there is a central intelligent being or whatever, brain, whatever you want to call it, that is aware, that is not domain specific, and that can transition between different domains on its own, that is goal driven. All of these aspects, generalism, goal driven, awareness, are at the moment, I think, are non-existent. But the fact that we are not at AGI or, in my mind, close to it, does not mean that AI does not carry risks. These are two different things. And this is why maybe the one thing I can say is we can't rely on the companies that develop AI, like OpenAI and Microsoft and Google and Facebook, to be the ones who are also responsible for the ethics of using AI. It just doesn't make sense from an economical or an incentive point of view. They need to pursue the best technology they can. The governments and the global international forces have to make sure that it's being done in a responsible manner. Until we see that, we need to be concerned.
And science-based as well.
100%.
And science-based, because I see a lot of research and development around AI. I think there are tons per day out released, and I feel that there is a miscalculation from the government's top levels that don't really understand and don't really know how to compose with research and science, while you see, and you mentioned that Microsoft, OpenAI, and others know how to invest heavily in R&D. And so where does science lie?
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you, Zohar.
Thank you, Yael. It was a pleasure.
I look forward to having another episode.
Same here. Thank you.